I am Vactor, and this is the VACTOR-VERSE. My guest today is Mr. Paul Hermman, the only man in the multiverse who's doing more podcasts than I am. He is doing the Comic Binge, the MCU Fan Show, Star Wars The Saga Continues, the Spidey Dude Radio Network. This man is doing more podcasts than Ant-Man in the quantum realm. There's just so many possibilities and so many variants of Mr. Paul Hermman. But, sir, it is a pleasure to have you in the VACTOR-VERSE. How are you today?
Man, first of all, I'm humbled and honored to be here, sir, the VACTOR-VERSE. I'm doing well. I've watched a lot of alternative football today. That was great. XFL came back. I'm really excited about that. If you guys
I saw you tweeting about that.
Yeah, I'm a big football guy. And so if you hate football, sorry guys. But no, I'm doing great, man. Like you asked me to come on a few weeks ago, and it was honestly very I felt honored to anytime anyone asks me to get on anything, I always feel honored. And obviously you're no exception. And it's just humbling and just really rad to be on a show to talk with someone about comics. I love it. I mean, I can't shut up. People who know me know that I can't stop talking. So,
you're the perfect guest to have on because I want my guests to be talking about comics as much as possible and to be spreading the good word. I love the hashtag that you are always promoting. Read more comics. Thank you. That's my mantra as well. I'm always trying to get people to understand. I think this is the greatest medium in all of pop culture and all of literature. This is the one that I think is just perfect. So I'm glad that I have another acolyte with me on the Read More Comics front. So I'm excellent. I'm very happy to have you here. So the first thing I want to get is your comic book origin story. How did you get into comics? Was it an animated show? Was it toys? Was it movies? What was it that hooked you on comics?
Well, I would say what got me into comics, for a lot of us that are my age, I'm 41 years old, and was probably early mid 80s. So probably Secret Wars. And that's what for me, what it was. It was Secret Wars. I think that I maybe saw some of the cartoons, like Spider-Man and things like that. But I vividly remember, I think I gave you issue 5 of Secret Wars, the cover of that issue, where it's like the villains are on the cover and like Spider-Man's all chained up by one of the absorbing mans.
Ooh,
like, that striking Mike Zeck. I think it's Zeck cover. It's either Zeck or what's his name? Layton. I think Layton, one of them did. I think it's Zeck though. Anyway, I just had that issue has been just implanted in my mind forever. And we always had like these comics laying around. I have an older brother. He's 6 years older than I am. And with your older brother, you're always going to have like different things around than like you would have like your age. So I think, and I'll get that in a second. So put a pin in that. That's the other one I sent you. Growing up, it was just a weird thing because I always had comics around and I always had the figures around. So it was I always associated like Spider-Man and these toys with these comic books. And for the most part, and we had like some random like Spider-Man issues like hanging around. Another one I remember vividly was I think Spectacular Spider-Man 1. Oh my God. I know I'm terrible with numbers, but I'm good with like visuals. And I can tell you it's the issue where Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, where Sabretooth is slashing Black Spider-Man's suit across the stomach. And he's like, ugh! And I have my original comic of that somewhere too. That issue and that Secret Wars comic are probably, they're probably equal almost. I almost forgot about that comic. See, my memory's going. But that is like probably what I grew up with reading and looking over. And not, I say reading, meaning looking at the pictures, right?
Right.
And so, that through years of my mom and dad going to the 7-Elevens, or like any kind of gas station where a comic would be around, like, oh, okay, here's a buck. I mean, good old days. Yeah, here's a buck for this, hey mom, I'm going to get gas. Can I get a comic? Okay, fine. Shut up. Here you go. And so you just kind of start building up. And again, I'm not reading these things. I'm just looking at the pictures because I can't read,
Right.
And so, it's very interesting because I really gravitated towards comics at a young age. My brother liked comics a lot. So like you like them yourself, but you see your older brother having different ones. So it kind of enhances your love of the medium a little bit, even though again, I can't read. So, so that was my initial foray into the comic books. Was that at a young age? It was through Secret Wars, and
Nice.
Spider-Man instantly was my favorite character instantly.
Yes,
So.
that's one that I share with you. That was Spider-Man was always the character that I related everything through. I've told this story on the podcast before, but it was basically like the 6 degrees of Spider-Man. Like every character in my mind was, oh, how does he relate to Spider-Man? Daredevil, oh, he's Spider-Man's friend. Like Captain America, Spider-Man looks up to him. Like that's how the lens in which I viewed everybody. So Secret Wars, like with the black costume, that was one of the quintessential stories for me. So I'm right there with you.
And really quick about Spider-Man, and I'm curious what you think about this. Like Spider-Man's costume, like everyone's so sacred about like the Steve Ditko thing, and granted, like it is probably the best superhero costume ever created. Like this is no BS, but it's so interesting when I'm like, I look at that. I grew up Spider-Man having multiple costumes. And I'm curious, like if that ever, because I like costume changes. I like when people like, mix things up and try different things. And I think it's because I grew up in the Secret Wars era where like Spider-Man had his original costume, then he has black costume. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I always accepted, like, I've always liked costume changes. I'm curious, are you the same way? Or are you kind of more of like traditional? Like I like the more traditional costumes usually. Curious.
When I was growing up, I always loved different costume changes and the what's it called? The Captain Universe costume, the black costume. I was in love with the Captain Universe storyline just because as a kid I was like,
are you serious?
It's Spider-Man and you're giving him like Superman's powers, like he's got you're giving my favorite character all the powers. Yes, I want this 100% all the time.
All right, hold on, man. This is really funny. Have you read the What If issue where he kept his powers?
Yes.
Okay, we on the last Spider-Man Council. That's a plug. That's our Spider-Man show on the Comic Binge. Which is just like I get a bunch of people and I always demand people to only give me short answers because everyone like myself will just go for hours and I'll have like 8 people on. Anyway, the last episode we did a Across the Spider-Verse kind of hype episode, right? Kind of, and I said, who is your favorite alternate Spider-Man that's not Miles? Because Miles is like, I think is too easy. Again, I love Miles Morales. This is not like a diss on him by any means, but it's just like, I want to get different perspectives, right? Yeah. And I picked this guy because he was, because in the What If issue is that whole idea if he did have his Superman powers, like you were saying, that's exactly what I said too, Justin. I was like, if he had his powers, this is what would happen. And it was really good. It's a really good issue. It's, by the way, for people who are curious about that issue, Scott McDaniel of Nightwing fame drew that comic. But it does not look like Scott McDaniel. It's a lot more tamed down, less stylized, but it's very good still. Very good. And go read it. It's a fun little issue. But yeah, that's so funny. You love it. I love this thing too.
I wonder if that's on Marvel Unlimited. I was trying to look it up just now.
It's not. You have to use other means, wink, or go buy it physically. I have 2 versions. I have my original and I bought another one because my first one was hacked because I read it so much.
Okay. So yeah. But yeah, I was a huge Captain Universe Spider-Man fan when I was growing up. So yeah, when I was growing up, I loved different costumes and I would get bored with the same costume over and over again. I think as I've gotten older, there's something about me that I still love costume changes and variations, but the classics for me, I don't know why, but they kind of resonate more. Maybe it reminds me of my childhood. I don't know, but I have that as well. But you know what? I think it has to be a really good one. Like it has to be Superman, Spider-Man, because like with Iron Man, I don't love his old suits. It's like, and that was something that when I was a kid, I loved technology. I love future, like Back to the Future Part 2 was always my favorite growing up because I was like, this is the future. This is all this great stuff. And I hated Part 3 because I was like, this is old. This is like super old stuff. So I don't like that. So with Iron Man, I had the same thing where it was like, at the time when it was first coming out, this is brand new, this is future stuff. But now you look back on it 20, 30, 40 years, and it's like, ooh, that doesn't look as good as it used to. So I'm like, I like the modern Iron Man. I like the sleek stuff. So there's certain characters like that, or like the old Rogue costume I wasn't a big fan of. I'm a huge fan of the 90s X-Men. So I guess it just depends. It's depending on the character. Some I like the costume changes. Some I like them to like stay in the classics sometimes.
Stay in their lane. Stay in the comics. Stay in this lane. And I'm all over the place because sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't. It just really depends. Like sometimes things will grow on you, right? Like that's kind of the thing. I get it, but growing. But sorry, I just want to get your quick take on that. So as my origin continues, I would say I think what really I sent you another one. Another comic, and this one is a little, and people probably will never believe me when I say this, or think I'm full of BS. And I meant to get my original copy of this, by the way, because it's destroyed. But so I said I had a brother who's 6 years older than I am. So growing up, what I think helped, again, I'm like probably like what 6 maybe when this happens. I forgot what Batman 89. That's a good long way short.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Batman 89 is happening, and obviously hype for that is just going crazy. And I'm 82, 89, so I'm like about 7 years old, 6, 7 years old, and so I'm like my brother is 6 years older than I am. And I like comic books, and I had a Batman toy. I saw some cartoons of like the Super Friends or whatever, here or there, but I wasn't that entranced on DC characters. I grew up I'm a Marvel zombie through and through. It's who I am. But I've always liked Batman. But when Batman 89 hype started happening, like obviously things, even I was starting to get excited for it because I'm like, oh, Batman is a superhero. It's a character. It's a comic book character. My brother brought home one day Batman, The Dark Knight Returns. And so I'm like first grade kindergarten. Like I think this is literally how old I was. And my brother's like, 12, 13. And he brings it home and he's like, look how good this is. And I loved it. Like I gotta tell you, like I could not read a lick, but I loved that comic and still do to this day. And going back why we exist, right, Justin? Like why do our YouTube channels exist, the Comic Binge and the VACTOR-VERSE and everything? The reason why they exist, we love this medium, right? And the reason that we love this medium is because it's so unique. And I always use The Dark Knight Returns when I talk about this, how powerful comics can be, because I could not read anything, right? In fact, I probably didn't start reading comics till like 3rd, 4th grade, because I just could look at the pictures and like. Right. And understand what's going on without having to read anything. And The Dark Knight Returns is probably one of the best examples of an artist not even having to use words, in my opinion. Again, maybe it's just me, but when you look, when I look through those pages, I mean, obviously there's things I missed, but I got the gist of everything Frank Miller was saying in that book. And I loved everything about that comic book. I obviously knew, I could tell who the mutants were. I could tell what Robin, Carrie Kelly. I could tell what the themes that he was going for with Batman. Everything was visually there for you. And it's such a beautifully crafted book. It is just, and I know Frank Miller's a little bit of a hot topic these days. And it's so funny to see him like rise from like, he's like unstoppable to like down here again, and some of that's on him. I'm not going to say he's completely innocent, but I'm never, and I think people have like now hated on The Dark Knight Returns. Like it's almost like cool to hate on it, and I'm like, nope. Like this thing is a work of art, it's a masterpiece. And that book growing up was what I read, and I obviously should never have been reading it at that age. Like I should have, like my parents should have been way smarter. My mom, I give my mom credit though. She's always been a little liberal with art in general. Like just, she's never wanted to censor me to an extent. Like she's like, oh, you could watch this. You could watch that. It's not been, my dad was the opposite. He was a lot more like, but mom's like, oh, you can watch this. He's fine. And I think there's value in that for sure. I think my parents probably knew what I was looking at. They probably wouldn't have maybe let me look at it because like you got like the woman with the Nazi tattoos, if you remember that But you know what? But to the credit of a child, and I think you can realize sometimes with kids, it just flies over you. And I never, right. So it was never like, I never was like, oh my God. I was just like, oh, that's weird. That's all I thought, you know? And that book really, I think, really made me fall in love with Batman. And then through 89, and then I got hooked on the 66 show, because I just love Batman. But I never got really, he was always like the other media superhero. I never got into the comics until later on. But The Dark Knight Returns is always a comic that I would return to and just flip through and just be like, excuse the pun, I'm not trying to be, punny here, but marvel at, because I loved the art. Frank Miller's work is so distinct and so beautiful. I think that probably cemented my love of comics, to be honest, because I knew it was different by the way it was created, the way the pages felt, the art, the coloring, the story was more serious. I could sense that all from the book. So that probably cemented my love of comics, because I loved Spider-Man and all these things, but The Dark Knight Returns was like, it felt important even as a child. So I love that sort of death. So that's nice. So since then, I'll kind of fast forward a little bit. I just kept buying comics. My brother, who's 6 years older, got in high school, thought comics were lame. I inherited all his comics, most of them, like his first appearance of Deadpool. I own that. Nice. I remember buying that comic at a 7-Eleven in Lake Stevens, Washington. And I remember we went in, he saw it off the rack. I remember like, he looks like Spider-Man. And like, I remember that day very vividly. We bought a couple comics each. God, the spinner rack. Love you. And so through that, just kept buying comics. But, and I'm not sure where your comic journey is exactly, but like, growing up, I loved comics. I was the only person in Lake Stevens, Washington who loved comics. Like the only person. And it was just it felt very isolated, going to the comic store by yourself, and, you can't, and people are like, why do you read comics? So that whole thing goes on. And then like, as I got older, you get more interest and you get less money. And then like, I discovered music in high school, and then, in punk rock. And then that kind of took over. Comics took a complete backseat. Went to a Bible school. Yes, I said Bible school. And met some amazing people. My people I consider my family still to this day. My friend Dave Valdez, who's on Instagram, Father's Figures. I met him through that, and that's one of my best friends of all time. And we love comics together. But through that, I kind of peripherally saw comics, and was always wanting to get back into them, but just kind of was like, I don't have money. I'm doing music, whatever. And it wasn't until I got fully back into comics was until 2004. So I started buying I started working at a call center, and I started buying trades to get back into I'm on the phone. I'll just look through comics, and I started picking up a few things here and there. Frank Miller Daredevil. I heard about that. Wanted to get back into that. So I'm like, okay, kind of just casually dipping into it until one day I saw Spider-Man, New Avengers Breakout.
Ooh, yes.
I saw the trade of that. And I was in a comic store by my favorite Mexican restaurant, Gorditos in Seattle, Washington. Go there. And Dreamstrands Comics. And I remember this is 2004. I was like kind of just, buying things casually, whatever. And I went, what the hell? I went, Spider-Man is in the Avengers? He's like, yeah, man. I was like, I've always wanted that. I've wanted the JLA Avengers forever. And I'm like, Wolverine? Like, what the? I'm like, all right, I'm in. Like, I'll go. And it was a great jumping on point. And I foolishly said to myself, and because the other was going on too. If you guys don't know that story, the other by JMS, J. Michael Straczynski was going on. It was also happening, right? And so I was like, man, I need to, this is a good jumping on point. So I said to myself, I'm only going to get New Avengers and Spider-Man. That's it. And that is 2004, and it escalated quickly because Civil War came out right afterwards, and I got it.
Yes.
And I pretty much had never looked back since. And I remember just like,
Nice.
even in doing music and like trying to like, save money to have for recording and things like that. I remember being like, how am I going to be able to afford my comics still? Like I remember I was always in the back of my mind, and getting, finding my wife, meeting my wife and dating her. Like we met and we kind of connected through comics, and I never stopped buying comics. I never stopped reading them and I've just been reading them pretty much nonstop since 2004. So that's basically my origin story of comic books.
That is very similar to mine.
Okay.
A few deviations here and there. I actually got out of comics in high school, same, where all throughout elementary and a little bit of middle school. Actually, you know what? It's probably middle school when I got out of comics. Girls and, things, other interests, sports was huge for me. So comics had to take a back seat, but I always, in the back of my mind, had this love for Spider-Man and love for comics. And then what got me back into the whole genre and the medium was two things, actually three things: Ultimate Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and then podcasts. It was like everything kind of came together where I think, I can't remember which came first. Maybe it was Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and I was like, oh, I want to read a comic, because the movie, I loved the movie. I went and saw it 6 times in the theater. I said, I got to read something. So I went to the local comic shop, found Ultimate Spider-Man, was hooked, and same thing with New Avengers, was hooked from there. And then podcast, it was, okay, when they hit iTunes, when they hit Apple, and I was like, I can search for anything I want. So, what is it? Basketball, sports, music, comic books. Oh, okay. And then I found certain comic book podcasts, and this is like 2005, the early days of podcasting. It was where, there's other people that like comics too. It's not just me. I had that kind of isolation of the same type of feeling where no one around me was liking comics. And the internet and podcasting really showed me, it really connected me to other comics fans. So people were talking about their recommendations, and I was going to the local library and picking up books. And so that was how I got back into it. And I've kind of been the same, where it was just, I hit the ground running. And with this, the current age that we're in with the MCU, and it's, bigger than ever now. And I could talk to people and say, oh, Ant-Man? Yeah, it's a comic book. Like, so there's that common ground now. With my wife's sister is actually a prime example, where she knows nothing about comic books, but through my wife and myself, I'm able to share it with her. We actually went and saw Quantum Mania with her and her boyfriend. So it was like, this is something that we can share, and just that there's that universal connection now is just based off of these comic book characters and these stories. So just the power of these ideas. And that's something that I think, I'm sure you have the same type of relationship that I do, where Grant Morrison had a book, Super Gods, and he talks about how these characters, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they're more powerful than any idea, because they were here before we were born. They're going to be here after we're dead. So he's like, Superman is more real than I am, just because in people's minds, they're just going to keep that idea of Superman going stronger than I ever could. So that's, for me, that's just the power of storytelling in general. But I think comics are the best storytelling medium that we have, that we've created as human beings.
I'm sorry to talk about, the great, I've always loved, music has always been probably like the medium that I gravitate towards for the longest time, more than anything. But I've always loved comics, and it's always been a medium that I've always said is underrated, and it's definitely become probably my favorite medium now. If you even compare music and comics, you know what I'm saying? A medium, whatever, but apples and grenades, you could say. But that being said, the comic book medium, I mean, I could go on for a whole series of podcasts about how comics are so unique, man. And that, if I may I'm just going to throw this out there, because people need to know this. Like, when you talk about, you remember Seduction of the Innocent, right? I'm sure you know that,
Yes.
that sort of the whole thing, right?
Right.
Frederick Wortham, is that his name is?
Yes. Right. That's right.
There's a great book. I haven't finished it because I'm terrible at finishing things like books and stuff like that. Audiobooks are beautiful though. I gotta tell you that. There's a book called 10 Cent Plague, and I was listening to that audiobook, and it's about the whole, the comic industry during that time. And I gotta tell you, it really got me started to think about where comics are now. Comics are in a weird place right now. They're very weird in a sense to where like the industry doesn't know where to go. And I think a big reason why is because of YouTube and things like that, which I think is the future of comics. Personally, I think the future of comics is in some kind of visual, like not like they'll be on YouTube, but you know what I mean? Like I think through us, like people like us anyway, who are promoting it, people will discover it. Now, the reason the comics have stayed like this weird kind of thing is because it's not just because it's like only weirdos read it. It's because we go back to Seduction of the Innocent and during that whole time frame, it was like they were burning comic books. You know, they were going out there saying this is a devil, basically saying it's a devil medium. And I thought about for a minute there, I said, what if like these same people were able to destroy rock and roll, right? Like what if they were able to shut down Elvis? Like think about that. Like that's what they did. Like they basically stopped rock and roll because that comics were like just, it was flourishing. My mom, she's like, I think she's almost 70. My dad's 70 now. But I remember talking to my mom about it, and this has kind of got my brain rolling because it's all kind of on the same time. I said, you know, my daughter's name is Lulu, and she bought her like a Lulu comic books. And if you guys don't know what that is, it's an old comic book. And my mom's like, I read those when I was a kid. And I was like, you read comics when you were a kid? And she's like, oh yeah, we all did. I was like, huh, because she's right at that age before Wortham. And then when Wortham came, that's when everyone's like, oh, this is a trash medium. And then think about the negative things all those mothers and all those children had. Like there in that book, it talks about kids all of a sudden were like told, oh, you should not like comic books. And they were basically like, oh yeah, they jumped on a bandwagon to say comics are bad. So all those people basically then become as like, you know, 8, 10, 9-year-olds are all of a sudden growing up and thinking comics are weird and dumb. They start having children. They aren't going to buy comic books. Why would they? So, and if they see other people read comics, they go, oh, that's weird. That's a weird thing. So you see what I'm saying? Like, so comics have had this very strange, like just thing. And it's also become the backbone of Hollywood now, which is just,
yeah.
So I say all that to say that the comic medium is such in a weird place right now. And I've almost said, when's like the Unbreakable like movie, like like the idea of like, if there's a Mr. Glass, where's the Unbreakable guy? So like, if there's the Frederick Worthams of the world, where's the opposite of that for comic books? Because I feel like there's eventually going to happen. And now that comics are like, people are realizing, oh, comics are kind of rad now. Like, but people don't know that they're comics. Like I worked with this girl, you know, she's like 25 and we were talking and she's like, oh, and I was talking about comic books, you know, and she's like, oh yeah, I don't really read comics. I'm like, why not? She's like, I don't know. You know, I'm like, well, we started talking. She's like, she mentioned The Walking Dead. I'm like, well, Walking Dead. She's like, that's a comic book. She's like, it is? Oh. And this is like 2 years ago. Dang. I'm like, I'm just like, what? And so that is, and that's the thing though. Marvel has done a terrible job of promoting itself. And I say Marvel being Disney, I should say, right? And I'm not sure if you've seen the episode I talk about it, but on the Comic Binge, but I said James Gunn did more for comic books in one video. One video. More for comic book medium than Disney has ever, maybe. Like ever. And like it caused books to sell out. And I'm just like, that's just one guy with a decent like reputation of people can respect him, right? And all of a sudden it blows the hell up and all the comics are sold out and it's great. And I'm just like, what the hell, man? And the comic medium is so beautiful because people don't realize that it very much is like, you know, I'm not sure if you're into music at all, but if you create music, but like I liken it to like making a comic, and I've made very little comics. I made like 5 pages, people. So, but the little bit I've gone into this idea of making comics, it feels like in a band because like everyone's contributing, It's not like a novel where it's like it's one person, or it's not like a movie where it's like an orchestra, where it's like thousands of people, and it's like you have to. It's like that's a whole different thing of itself, right? This is, 5 people working in sync together, and there's something special when those 4 or 5 or whatever people are all in sync, and they make like a pop song, like a 22-page comic book, right? And again, obviously the comic medium is more than the superhero medium. I get it. I just had a video with my wife where we talk about all her favorite artsy comics. But still, the thing is that it's a medium that is so underrated in the fact that you can get so much out of it in a short amount of time. And that is a beautiful thing, because time is important for all of us, right? And not only that, but you don't have, like, how you dissect it is not dependent on what the artist creating it intended to be. So you can look at a page for a minute or 5 seconds, or stare at, the layout of this artist of trying to convey an emotion or whatever. That the comic medium is so beautiful that way that more people just need to know about it. And that's why the comic binge exists. That's why, I just say people read more comics. That's why I do the hashtag that my friend Chris Cloud, that one of my best friends, he's my co-host for most of the shows. That hashtag exists because he created it. He was like, he's telling people you should read more comics. Like, he kind of started saying it out of like a debate with someone, to be honest. And I think it's what it happened. But I loved saying that. I'm like, read more comics. That's exactly what it needs to be, because people need to read more. Because if they read more, they'll be like, oh, this is actually a pretty rad medium. So that's, to me, has become like my calling card of like, people need to just know more about comics, because they know more, they might read more, and they might actually like it a lot and go, this is actually kind of rad. So that's why the binge exists, a big reason why the binge exists. And that's why I really I try to champion. I'm nobody. I'm a freaking nobody. But my goal is, if I can get like more people, and more being like 10 people into comic books, then my work is done. So that's kind of where my attitude is with my life, as far as like non-family stuff, So yeah.
And that's the same thing for me. Like I said, where I'm always telling my friends, hey, there's a comic, you could read a comic, and try to do it with my family, as well as I'm always just trying to spread the gospel of comics. And hey, you can get it at the local library, because there's always some type of hurdle where it's like, oh, it costs too much, or I can't get it. And I'm like, you can get it for free at your library. You could get the
Hoopla, baby.
Marvel, digitally.
Oh my God.
There's so many ways that you can get comics. So I'm always trying to spread. So I love that hashtag, read more comics. And I think the biggest thing that has hurt the spread of comics is the stigmas of, there's two huge stigmas for comics that I'm always trying to fight against. Number one, it's only superheroes. That's the only type of comic book. And people, the term comic book is synonymous with superhero for most people these days.
Because Superman, right? I mean, like, he's the first superhero, and he came through a comic book. It's basically the first quote unquote comic, even whatever, right? So, I mean, I get it.
And it's like with my dad, and I'm sure with your parents, they grew up where romance comics were probably bigger than superhero comics, Western comics, like horror comics. Like, there's so many different genres that it's like, man, I wish people would look at them. And I think that was good that The Walking Dead kind of blew up, where people can see, hey, it's not just about superheroes. And then the other one that I always try to fight against, and I have this with video games too, where people are like, and actually with animation as well, oh, it's for kids. Comic books are for kids. And like, oh, that was just a bunch of guys running around in their underwear and things like that. So I'm always trying to fight those things, and always trying to give validity to comic books. So I think you and I are right along on the same lines of that for comics. Now, along those lines as well, I wanted to get a little bit more on the comic binge, the origin of the comic binge, and why it exists. Like, you talked about it a little bit, but can you kind of walk me through from the day you thought of, oh, I should do a YouTube channel, until today, where people can go and subscribe, youtube.com/thecomicbinge.
Thank you.
Kind of walk me through that.
Well, it's kind of a little bit of an emotional journey. And again, I talked about before the show, I was like, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I am dramatic. But this is, this has a lot of layers to it. So I'll just start a little bit with the Comic Binge exists partly because of a friend of mine who passed away right before the pandemic, and he was one of my best friends. We did podcasts together for years, and basically, before he passed away, my life was very dark. I was going through some dark stuff in my life, and without him and with my other friend, we became like a 3-person unit, and they were always supporting me and telling me and things. But one of the things there's a reason I'm saying all this. One of the things that he was always telling me, I was doing podcasts, he'd be like, man, Paul, he always say, you need to get on YouTube. You're perfect for YouTube. And I tell you, I hate being on camera. I hate it. Like I suck at it. People probably know I suck. They're like, yeah, this guy's terrible on the camera. He can barely talk too. But I totally get it. Trust me. But you're too kind. But seriously though, like I was like, I have petrified in front of a camera. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do that. And in editing, I'm like, oh God, no, thank you. and I just kind of, and also, honestly, I was just lazy. I was straight up lazy. And I just didn't want to do it. And I kind of thought, but he kept pushing me. And when he passed away, I kind of dabbled on doing those things right before he passed away. And then when he passed away, I was like, it started kind of feeling the pressure of like, maybe I should do that, but just whatever. But then long story short of this, so my best friend passes away. Pandemic happens. Things get really crazy and weird. So crazy during the pandemic that my wife and I are adopting a baby girl out of nowhere, basically. And through that, which I will reveal more eventually, my goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers. And that's kind of like my thing. Also, I'm going to beg. I don't beg for anything. I'm going to beg for 1,000 subscribers just because I want to help like get things moving of certain things. So please subscribe to Comic Binge, is only because I want to get to 1,000. After that, I'll take me 20 years to get up to 2,000. That's fine. Anyway, but through the Comic Binge, I got this idea to start a YouTube channel because my daughter, there's some things I want to do. And my daughter was kind of the basis of that inspiration. And which I'll save more for when eventually the video, but for the 1,000 subscriber thing, but whatever. But through that, I was like, with her and my friend John, I said, I just got to do it. I just got to do it. And I started kind of like making my own videos. And then I met my, kind of reached out to my buddy who I do videos with Spidey Dude, Zach. And Zach did StreamYard. And I was like, I hated StreamYard at first. God, I hated it so much. But then through that, I was like, oh, like this is actually like a perfect thing for me to use for like live streams, that I can actually start doing like more videos for the Comic Binge. And I was like, oh, okay, I should do that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I did. And through the live streams, I was able to like devote my time away from my family of editing videos all the time to finally getting out and doing content. And I told myself, I'm going to do a video show at least, if not more, once a week. And it's going to be centered at basically preaching the gospel of comics, but like trying to do it in a fun way where people feel welcome and I don't spoil things. I try not to spoil. I'm always successful, but I try not to spoil things. And I try to make it like where people can have like a place to go who don't know comics and can get like an insight a little bit, like not like insight of like how cool it is, but like they can have someone to kind of listen to, like kind of like sell them on it, but also learn about it without spoiling it, and then go read it and come back and get the same kind of thing. Like it's evergreen in that way. I try to make it as evergreen as possible. And it's been a slow grow, but like I've met so many amazing people. I mean, I've just met you, and I've already love you to death. Like we're already homies. Like, you know, we already have a lot in common, which is hilarious. You know, especially if you love this, you've already got my heart, sir. That's all I gotta say. You already had my heart before, but that, like, it cemented it, you know. But like through that, I've been like trying to like just get people to like jump on and read more comics and like get out there and like there's a comic for everybody, you know. And I try. Obviously, superheroes are the main focus only because I love superhero comics, but I'm trying to get more diversity of comic books in there, diverse opinions too. I'm trying to get all kinds of people on there, you know, and because I just wanted to be a bunch of like my friends, or, you know, me as a bunch of, you know, white male dudes on there, you know, like, so I'm trying to get like, you know, my wife on there, her friend on there, and, you know, just as many different kinds of people on there as I can, because I love different opinions, no matter where they come from, because I love arguing. I love debating. I love discussing, and because I think we all grow from that. There's value there, and discussing art of any medium is so important. And I think comics is no different. And so I tell you, man, regardless of what happens with the binge, I love doing it so much that I will never stop doing it. It could be like 5 people watch it, I'll probably still do it because I freaking love it. And it's been fun. Like like I said, I've met a lot of amazing people. Alex from Comic Book Historians, I've got to know him through this, and my channel's grown basically because of him. You know, basically him. You know, he's amazing. I love that guy, Alex. If you're listening, I love you. And you know, I'm just very, very appreciative of all the people who give their time on the show, because people they take their time out to be on my show, and I freaking appreciate the hell out of that. So. Yeah, but like just you know, if you're out there and you want to learn more about comics, like I love sub-series. So like if you go on the playlist, because I don't publish a lot of videos. I may take a little snippets from there, here or there, to post them. Like you do a great job of that, man. Like you are phenomenal at that. I'm always like, thank you. Like this guy gets it. Like I can't get it. I just don't have the time or the energy to do it. But you do it really well. And but what I've done is I create these sub-series and put a playlist on there. And so like I have like the the Spider-Man Council. I've got a Batman show called A Night in Gotham. I've got a Superman show called, Why We Love Superman. There's like stupid things like that. I'm just like, I just love that stuff. I don't know why, I just do. And so, so basically I want people to be easily go where like, I like Superman. Well, here's a Superman thing, you know? And it's a fun theme of like, I have the hardest of hardcore Superman fans on there. I mean, not even lying. Like, I will debate anyone who says that they have bigger Superman fans on that show more than my show does, because I got Michael Bailey. If you know Michael Bailey, that guy is like, he is Superman fan. Like, he is the embodiment of that. My friend Chris Cloud, my regular co-host, same thing. He embodies Superman fandom. Like, he is that person. Like, those few people, no, like, you're not gonna find anyone bigger than that, you know. And I'm sorry. So like, it just throughout all the different shows I try to do, and you know, and whatever, like in indie comic shows, like trying to promote that. I'm trying to do more independent stuff, but it's just harder because, to be honest, people don't want to watch it. Like, and that's kind of, and I'm not the person who's like, I need views to get the validation necessarily. Like, I'm not saying I need that, but like, that's bad. But I feel bad for the people who I'm trying to promote. That's what I feel bad for, because I want them to get like. I want people to watch their videos because, like, to promote their books, you know. The Atonement Bell, my buddy Jim, like, I remember the first time I had him on, only 10 people watched the video, and I was like, damn, you know. And I remember I had him on a bunch of times. I'm like, dude, I felt so bad. I'm like, I need to have you on so we can like get more people to watch this, and really, that's really it. Like, I just, you know, it's been fun, like getting out there and doing all these different shows, and. You know, and like the binge exists because I want to promote the medium. And like you said, you found like, you know, you're a like-minded person like myself, and like your channel exists to promote the medium of comics. And obviously the comic medium is way bigger than superheroes. I mean, I'm not sure if you ever heard of Fantagraphics, you know, that comic.
Yes.
Yeah. I live literally, like, I probably shouldn't really tell you how I'll just say this. I don't live very far from Fantagraphics. I'll just say that. It's almost embarrassing how little I've gone there. It's so embarrassing. I'm like, man, I'm so bad. But, you know, but there's so many great comics through there. Like so many artsy stuff. I mean, I've gotten my wife so many Christmas presents of artsy comics that I'm like, they look cool. Not really for me, but like there's value there too, right? And I want to promote it. And on the last show we did, we talked about them, and they're so cool. And I just want more people to read and also create independent comics, man. Like, I think that's the thing that's the thing I'm trying to build. The main reason why I want the audience to be built up for the binge is to build up an audience where I can eventually create myself, for not just for me, but for my friends who want to create, and for people who want to create, like some kind of independent publishing. We can get the people out there and get their stories heard, because the comic medium is so awesome and it's so accessible now more than ever. And it's just like, I just feel like I feel like it's a powder keg ready to blow in a good way. Like I really do feel that way. And maybe I'm completely full of SH and then it's like comics will die. I have no idea. I don't think so. But with YouTube and everything, it just feels like the market's ready for like a Harry Potter like situation, right? Like something where it's gonna blow, like The Walking Dead should have, and Marvel Comics should have, but it hasn't for whatever reason, and that's fine. But I always say, like, it's waiting for the Harry Potter situation to happen, because kids like didn't read books. They read books, but they don't they don't want to read books. They want to play video games, whatever. Like,
right.
From a peripheral standpoint, Harry Potter, like everyone read those books. People don't read those books. Like, how did you get those people to read? Because they got traction, whatever, right? I said, think about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles out in this era, like that whole, like, just giant, like, storm, and put it out to now, where the medium, where everything was accessible, that would be, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would be what Harry Potter was for, like, young adult novels or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It blow up because those guys were independent. They had their own comics and they were putting them out, and they could like get those comics out to people. But like, even back then it was like, it kind of blew up, but like, not for comics, but not really.
Right.
But that's what comics needs right now. It needs something that transcends pop culture. It's family friendly, where it's like a Star Wars or like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where it's like adults can get into it and respect it and have fun with it with their kids, and the kids be like, go nuts for it. And then it just kind of goes from there. That's what comics needs right now. And it doesn't have to be from Marvel. It can be an independent thing, and it's going to happen. I do think it's going to happen, because the way it's so easy to create comics these days, or not create, to release comics and get them out there and promote them a lot easier than it ever was before. Once someone kind of figures out how to do that better than anyone else I know or I can, that's when the medium will blow up and people will realize, oh, this medium rules. And actually, it's way easier to get into it than I thought. So that's kind of why the binge exists, because I want to help any way I can with that. And I also want to put up my own comics. I love creating stories and I love the comic medium. So the binge exists because of those reasons, to promote the medium and also create a safe place. I say safe place, but not like it's like dangerous out there necessarily, but I want to create a place where people feel welcome. That's my big thing. I want people to go on my show and be like, man, like I have no idea how to like read comics, but like they didn't like say like I was weird for not like knowing where to go left to right. Because on one of the shows we did for the Kane comic we reviewed, I told you to read. I talked to one of the people I had on there had never really read comics, and I wanted to address, because he's like had trouble like following where it was, and I remember being like, well, it's just left to right. It's easy. Come on, man. I try to encourage him. And we went to reread the comic. I went, oh, yeah, there are a couple times where it's a little harder to figure out. I'm like, oh, he's actually right. Okay. So it's like acknowledging like why there's some like roadblocks for comics, and like we can't take the normal things of like reading comics normally for granted, right? So I want to create that space, and I need to do a better job of creating like videos towards people who want to get into comics more. And that's maybe hopefully on the way, but either way, I want people to get to know us as people and know they can trust us and be like, if we, we're genuine people. And as we all know on YouTube, there's a lot of disingenuine personalities in everything, but especially comics, as we've been out there. So yeah, that's why the binge exists. I want to be authentic as possible. You don't have to love me. You don't have to agree with everything I say. But if you think that the comic binge is authentic and legit like that way, then I've done my job. So
Excellent. Well, why don't you let everyone know what time your live streams are on the Comic Binge and where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on the Comic Binge YouTube channel if you just type in the Comic Binge. You can find me on Twitter. If you just type in the Comic Binge, I think it's on there. I think it's Binge Comic. I get so lost with all the different, multimedias, but
I'll leave links in the show notes too.
Oh, you're very, very sweet. Thank you. But it's on Twitter. It's on there. But if you want to follow me personally, I'm on Twitter, which is Herman22 with 2 N's, aka P Thug. And all my stuff's on there. Basically every Tuesday at 7:30, between 7:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, we are on. We do live shows, and we do. It's a different topic every week. Basically, it's like it's no rhyme or reason. We're going through, like, next week we're gonna do. We don't do a lot of like pop culture reviews. That's just because it's comic related. We are doing a Quantum Mania review, but it's gonna be Quantum Mania review, but also going back to a lot of comic books, like comic book, tie-ins. Also, if you liked Quantum Mania, or if you want to know more about like those worlds, what comics to read, like kind of in that vein. We're going to do more of that, which I already do with MCU Required Reading, which is a playlist on my Comic Binge. It's a little bit like that, but a little more, but also a little more of a movie review. But we're going to tie it back into comics, so don't worry. But then a week after, we're going to be starting up our 52 DC comic books breakdown. So we're going to be, not the new 52, but the 52 after Infinite Crisis. So we just binged through Infinite Crisis. So if you guys want anything interested into that world, we just went through that, and then we're going through 52 now, which was Chris Cloud, my partner in crime, has been wanting me to read for literally 10 years. And
you never read it?
I've never read it. I've heard it's great. I've heard it's fantastic, and so I'm excited to read it. I have all the volumes now. And so I'm really excited to read it. I'm a big Jeff Johns fan. I love Jeff Johns.
Nice.
I pretty much have read, like, I don't think I've read anything of Jeff Johns I've not liked. So at this point, and I read a good point of his JSA, so yeah, that's the week out. That's not this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday, and the next month I've got like all kinds of I'm hoping a little bit of a tease. Are you familiar with the YouTube channel For the Love of Comics?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Go on there, subscribe, because an awesome guy, super, super humble dude. Love this guy to death. I've only talked to him a little bit. Hoping to get him on the show next month for a live stream. He lives in India. He likes comic books from a different perspective because he's not a superhero guy. He likes some superhero comics, obviously, but like he likes completely different comics than I do. And on his channel, he's got like tons and tons and tons of reviews and breakdowns of awesome, independent, crazy comics I've never heard of, or I've heard of, but like never like really dived into. And he talks about them. And just, again, you're talking about authentic people. That guy is awesome. So go Jeff, go subscribe to For the Love of Comics. Tell him the comic book sent you too, because but like it's a great channel, and hoping to get him on. It's looking like it's going to happen. I'll announce that eventually, but that's going to be a blast next month. So next month's going to be crazy. I got some other guests lined up. Hoping to get you on. We're eventually going to get Milestone. We're eventually going to do Static. I've never read Static. I have the compendium, and I'm excited to get into that. So we're going to eventually do that.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of stuff going on next month. I can't wait to dive into. So yeah, I'm excited. So lots of stuff on the Comic Binge. I've got a lot of episodes to go binge on there. So again, if you guys subscribe, I really appreciate it. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm hoping to dive more into the goals of the Comic Binge about putting out comic books. That's basically the announcement would be that, but like more just like my plans and what I'm trying to do and trying to figure that out. So go subscribe. Appreciate everyone. Yeah, Justin, thank you so much for having me on, man. This has been a blast. I'm sorry I've talked a lot. I warned you. But yeah, this has been an awesome time, man. Thank you.
Excellent, Paul. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I want to let everybody out there know you can go and subscribe to all of Paul's podcasts and his YouTube channel, The Comic Binge. We got to support comics. We got to get everybody out there reading more comics. So definitely do that right now, because Paul Hermann, or P Thug, if you're nasty, loves comics, and you should too.